like a core team's effort. And the Injective stack is overall, built, utilizing Cosmos SDK as well as a Tendermint-based proof-of-stake consensus mechanism with a lot of custom work and also like optimization to provide like instant transaction finality with a lightning fast performances of up to 25k TPS. And then with that also finality of transactions and also like guarantee of transaction inclusion and also finality of the block production itself. And on top of that, one of the biggest problems that still like plagues the majority of the DeFi ecosystem to this day are like, MEV related issues and front running related issues. So Injective is kind of built to like solve all these problems. Not only is it a highly performant chain with no drawback in terms of like speed, especially transaction finality, and then also it's also like extremely high throughput.
Hi everyone, welcome to Fully Diluted. I'm your host Dylan Bane on the enterprise research team at Messari. Today we are joined by Eric Chen, co-founder and CEO of Injective. He's here to talk about a lot of exciting new developments and teach us more about where Injective is today. So without further ado, welcome Eric. To start off, it'd be great just to tell us a bit about Injective. You guys positioned yourself as, I think, the blockchain for finance. Could you tell us a little more about what that means and what's Injective's unique value proposition?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me, Dylan. So Injective is a finance-focused blockchain. It means that it's an open, interoperable layer one blockchain that is the breeding ground for the next generation of DeFi applications. And already it includes a lot of decentralized spot and derivatives exchanges, prediction markets, lending protocols, and much, much more. And recently there's been a lot of exciting developments around GameFi outside of the core team's effort. And the Injective stack is overall built utilizing Cosmos SDK as well as a Tendermint-based proof-of-stake consensus mechanism with a lot of custom work and also like optimization to provide like instant transaction finality with a lightning fast performances of up to 25k TPS.
Very cool. Could you tell us a bit more about what inspired you to start Injective? What problems were you really seeing in blockchains and just infrastructure that you thought needed to be addressed?
Yeah, so I think for the longest time, like blockchain, especially some of the largest players, are known to be fairly slow, and if they're not slow, they're relatively like unstable or in flux, and they lose a lot of property when it comes to what's critical for like finance related applications. Like extremely impressive uptime, and then with that also finality of transactions, and also like guarantee of transaction inclusion, and also finality of the block production itself. And on top of that, one of the biggest problems that still like plagues the majority of the DeFi ecosystem to this day are like MEV related issues and front running related issues. So Injective is kind of built to like solve all these problems. Not only is it a highly performant chain with no drawback in terms of like speed, especially transaction finality, and then also it's also like extremely high throughput. But it also has like a base layer like financial modules that includes like a MEV-Resistant on-chain orderbook, and also like a lot of financial modules like the Oracle module, like the binary option module, etc. And all these come together to provide an extremely kind of like highway fast lane for a lot of critical financial transactions, and for Injective to be able to provide that in the cheapest and at the same time in the most performant way.
Cool. So out of all the applications on Injective, where are you seeing the most interest or the most volumes really being driven? I know there's been a big surge in Perp DEXs over the last year or two. Do you think that's where the majority of Injective volumes lie?
Yeah, I think recently with the hype around like Perp DEX, Helix has seen like a surge in volume. Yesterday it did 800. Today it's on track to do close to 1 billion. For historically, Helix has been able to facilitate more than I think 67 billion in terms of like volume on chain. And process also, like overall for a network, roughly 2 billion transactions and counting. So I think overall, like currently, as of the date of recording, Helix is definitely seeing like the most traction or like success from like a purely like volume perspective. But from like a raw like enjoyment and like user account perspective, there's been a lot of exciting development around like Hyper Ninja recently that like everyone loves to like hop onto for past few days. And obviously, this is not discounting a lot of the long-term ecosystem builders. This is just what I'm thinking off the top of my head for the past 3 days.
Yeah, I think a lot of our listeners are wondering, you see tons of perp dexes emerging. You're seeing some being native L1s, some being built on L2, some being built on alt L1s. Could you go a bit more into the architecture of Injective that could, potentially better facilitate a perp DEX like Helix?
Yeah, so what Injective really excels at is basically turning it into a public good for any type of applications and any type of builders within the platform. Not only is it like fully on chain when it comes to the order book, when it comes to the trading and settlement and everything, it's also fully permissionless when it comes to market creation, and it's also fully permissionless when it comes to different types of product curation and product creation. And what this kind of allows to, and recently there's just been a lot of excitement around iAsset, which is allows for like basically this concept of like on-chain stock, but also pre-IPO Perps that just went live yesterday on Injective as well. To be created to immediately bootstrap with institutional grade liquidity and immediately go into like trading for the masses to adopt. And I think this overall is basically like the best selling point for Injective is that a lot of things are like previously impossible or extremely inaccessible for like different types of builders to offer to the general user base is now possible on top of Injective for the very first time with extremely low effort as well. Mainly because Injective as an infrastructure has been developed over time, and also it has been maturing over time with extremely strong stability. And at the same time, it's fully open source, it's fully transparent, and it's fully permissionless for any type of creation as well.
Yeah, so you guys launched pre-IPO Perps yesterday on October 1st for listeners. What specifically does that mean? So like these, IPO stocks, do they have markets already? Are you creating the market? What's the reference point for the perp basically?
Yeah, so it basically brings in the hottest private companies like OpenAI, SpaceX, Stripe, and much, much more on chain. And these, they cover over, I think, 2 trillion plus in terms of a market capitalization. And what this means is that like it also comes with extremely high volume and activity and when it comes to secondary market transactions. And that's where, the typical sourcing of the price feed and also sourcing of the position marking is coming from. This comes from, Theta, which taps into multiple secondary market kind of reporting and trading platforms to be able to have this, live in real time and reflection of these type of secondary transactions. And recently, OpenAI just did a massive raise and makes OpenAI one of the most valuable kind of private companies in the world. And Theta was able to provide that and thereby reflecting that on these pre-IPO per products. That's been just extremely interesting timing because I think the day that the pre-IPO went out, OpenAI had a massive surge in terms of activity and also kind of valuation because of the secondary sale.
Right. When you're thinking about RWAs coming on chain, whether that's perps or spot, where do you see the most demand? Is it going to be in these pre-IPO areas where it's a bit more difficult for retail to access? Is it going to be in the larger stocks already public? Is it even going to be equities or is it going to be a different asset class? Where do you think the most value lies on chain for trading RWAs?
I think one of the most interesting part is that it's about the breadth of offering. It's about having a platform that, a user can migrate over their entire investment philosophy and activity onto all within the same platform, all within the same, click away. And so that's what's really important. It's not necessarily about going all in into a specific category of equities or going into a specific category of tokens or perpetual products, etc. It's about satisfying what users are looking for. If they're looking for something that's exciting and up and coming, like the pre-IPO perps, they have it. If it's about getting access to the major equities markets, etc., and they can get it. And obviously, with crypto, they can get all the exciting market opportunities as well. And this is probably the most important thing because if we think about it, recently there's been a lot of competition between Polymarket and also Kalshi. And obviously there's a lot of, different factors when it comes to the volume contribution between Polymarket and also Kalshi. But what's undeniable is that Kalshi has been extremely high velocity when it comes to coming up with different types of markets and offering to its users. And that likely partly contributed to outpacing Polymarket in terms of volume on the platform.
Gotcha. So breadth of offerings in one place where you can kind of just trade whatever you want. Would you characterize it like that?
Yeah, and it's extremely difficult for a single platform or a single company or a single team to be able to offer all these. And this is why it's extremely important for this to be an open offering where like anyone can launch these type of products like permissionlessly, to be able to go from like an ideation into like a live perpetual or like spot market within a matter of minutes, being able to done by anyone and coming up with liquidity provisioning, et cetera. And that's probably the most interesting or most important offering is that, if I want to make like a random like pre-IPO perp as well on my own accord, I should be able to by going through a process, by integrating related price speed and stuff like that. And I think this is what the end goal is having, thousands and thousands and thousands of markets that are created based on, user themselves at their own accord, and then finding traction this way to become like an exponentially expanding market set.
Yeah, sort of on that point, I want to talk a bit about prediction markets. So obviously, like you're talking about, large surge of interest, both on Kalshi and Poly market. I think there's a lot of activity or discussion on how to create permissionless markets where anyone can create a prediction market. From a more architectural infrastructure standpoint, what do you think is needed really for prediction markets to thrive? Is it more liquidity? Is it more architectural decisions? What's really the bottleneck?
I think at the current moment, one of the biggest differentiator, at least short term, when it comes to the relative success, of the platform, it's really about distribution and access. Because prediction market is trying to tap into a largely non-crypto native audience and a non-crypto native crowd. Because from like a financial perspective, like a financial profile perspective, prediction market is actually fairly unattractive for the risk appetite of like the majority of like crypto traders, other than large events or like large scale like highly liquid like opportunities. Because at the end of the day, like you're looking at most like 1 to 10, et cetera, like whatever payout it is, you can't really go leverage on it, et cetera, unless the odds are extremely like against your favor. So this means that like you really need to tap into the mainstream audience. You have to provide like a active rail for them to onboard. You have to, allow them to like join into the platform, utilize the platform, or be mobilized into kind of utilizing the product in the most convenient and the easiest way, and thereby, kind of like abstracting away or removing the crypto part as much as possible.
Abstract away. How are you thinking about doing that with Injective or supporting applications on Injective to do that?
So what Injective focuses on is the infrastructure piece to make sure the abstraction is done in the most native way as possible. This is also why Helix includes a lot of, Web 2 focus, more abstraction focused wallet solutions that allows users to, be able to trade on chain, be able to engage with all these products without even realizing that they have a crypto wallet. And one of the best showcase for that, actually, interestingly, has been Helix Mobile, where there's no concept of a wallet per se, where like you're just placing trade. And as a matter of fact, most of the user feedback has been more mainly surrounding the fact that like Helix Mobile is more easier. It's easier to use compared to like like the Helix web platform, because it doesn't require like any type of like on-chain interaction. It's basically full on a mobile app where like you can just perform all the activity as if it's a centralized platform. But in reality, in the back end, there's a wallet that's like facilitating it, and all the security properties are also being maintained.
So it sounds like you're trying to target more of a non-crypto native audience in order, I guess, to grow volumes, the chain. How do you bring these? You mentioned the app, but what are they really looking for? Like, why are they going to come on chain? Is it just the access something that they haven't been able to trade before?
I think at the end of the day, it's really all about like access and like product differentiation, and the access to opportunities. No matter how you try to like spin it or like figure out like ways around it, because being in DeFi, being in like in this space, you have a very strong philosophical alignment with like self sovereignty, individualism, et cetera, and decentralization, obviously, and also being in like a censorship resistant or like permissionless environment. But at the end of the day, to really bring the product to the masses, it's all about like what you can offer them and like what you can provide for them, what opportunity that they don't have, or what costs are they facing when they try to access those opportunities that you can remove for them. And it's honestly simple as that. And obviously, like Injective, as a chain, as an ecosystem, wants to provide the best tool set to enable applications to best serve either crypto native crowds, and also at the same time the non-crypto native crowds. And for us, it's all about making sure that as we move forward, obviously the net new users are going to be coming from the mainstream audience, and we have to be prepared in providing all the key infrastructural tools for them to achieve the most success.
Makes sense. So I want to turn the conversation to DATs, or digital asset treasuries. So Pineapple Financial, I believe, they raised 100 million to acquire INJ recently for their DAT. What do you think is the interest behind creating a DAT for Injective, and what are more traditional companies looking at on chain?
I think that is just one of those very creative and interesting vehicles for the general Wall Street and like financial institutions that are either held back by their ability to like integrate with like a crypto native thing that's in the exchanges, or held back by their mandates to be able to move really quickly on gaining exposure to these type of crypto assets. And oftentimes with different type of properties like MicroStrategy, they usually might be able to gain like leverage exposure to like crypto assets. And INJ being, selected by Pineapple Financial shows this type of like interest and demand into the ecosystem and into like the network coming from these like denied Wall Street institutions.
Gotcha. And Pineapple's also, I believe, bringing their mortgages on chains, something over 2.5 billion. What does that really mean? And could you walk us through that?
Yeah, so what's really cool about like Pineapple Financial is that they kind of like match like these have like mortgage providers and like buyers. It's essentially like a platform that matches like buyers sellers for these like mortgages for primarily the Canada region. And what's really exciting is that they thereby like by tokenizing all these mortgages on chain, they open up a completely new type of like platform and like venue to be able to access and a completely new audience for them to like, gain exposure to. So not only are they bringing, I think 2.5 close to 3 billion, the existing, mortgages on chain. It also means that the platform is fully transformed into hyper scaling it to like an international audience beyond just the Canadian investors.
Gotcha. So would you say they're targeting more on-chain use cases or users, or more facilitating or making, more creating more ease for off-chain investors who are interested in mortgages?
Great. Yeah, correct. It's a little bit both. By just having like a larger base of buyers, they make it more attractive for sellers to be able to put their mortgage through their platform.
Gotcha. Do you see other potential assets being brought in this way on chain?
I think RWA and especially a lot of these type of like securities and assets that are yield generating or that are highly investable has been like one of our primary focuses for the Injective Labs team and also the Injective Foundation team to ensure that like all these assets and all these companies and platforms are utilizing Injective as an infrastructure to be able to make that happen. Because one of the really exciting modules on top of Injective is, the RWA module, which allows for basically these sort of like permission tokens or these sort of like RWA tokens to be freely traded and freely incorporated into any type of like DeFi applications on top of Injective. And obviously, typically, if you think about it, like Aave would have to create like a kind of like a permission pool or like a permission layer for all these like permission assets. But for Injective's case, all these will be like kind of compatible right off the bat. I mean, like maintaining like the permission nature of things while without breaking any of the existing like permissionless applications, and at the same time, taking advantage or like parameterizing the access to liquidity in the process.
Have you thought about navigating law regulations in this space? Obviously, there's been a lot of very favorable developments, at least in the United States, in the last few months. But like, have institutions? Have you seen a change in institutional interest with these, positive developments?
Absolutely, it's night and day. Conversations have completely transformed and changed throughout the past 3 years. I think given like the U.S. government's like more favorable stance towards like crypto assets, it has certainly turned everything over when it comes to like institutional interest, like being more forward about like blockchain or crypto adoption, et cetera. And I think in general, like at the current moment, it's like extremely critical for folks on our side and also other like industry participants that go to Washington D.C. and educate all the policymakers and all the lawmakers to create the most sustainable and long-term and protective kind of like legislations for the industry. So this way, we have finally the clarity that we're looking for.
Yeah. Have you seen increased receptiveness among legislators?
Oh, absolutely. I think I've made quite a few trips to DC at this point, and will continue to do so a lot more as well. And I think quite a few, like folks from our side, have also started making trips to DC to talk to, all these like teams and policymakers. It's basically impossible, just a few years ago.
Also, on the institutional front, Cannery Capital is filing the first, I believe, staked INJ ETF, which is, I think, one of the first staked ETFs beyond ETH. Could you go a bit more into that, and why do you think institutions have interest in that?
I think this is, quite simply like a differentiation of, ETF products are just being filed en masse by, a lot of these like institutions, and what really separates and the reason why this is possible is because of how easy and also like all the features that comes with, a lot of the, native staking feature within Injective that allows for institutions to, very easily custody staked assets to be able to manage them with ease. And that's actually why injective staked ETF is one of very few that has been filed. And this is honestly, very much of a landmark step towards bringing staking yields to traditional finance. And obviously, I think it was like CBOE that also submitted like a request to like list a fund. So it means that the institutional interest has been extremely immense on this product.
How do you talk about or explain Injective to institutions? So obviously it's a financial focused blockchain. Do you see more receptiveness from them, and do you have a secret sauce in how you explain what you do?
Honestly, it's the same thing. What I would explain to anyone what Injective does, I would explain the same to these type of institutions. And obviously, depending on who they are and their level of understanding, you probably need to add more explainers or padding when it comes to the different terminologies being used. But I think one of the most interesting part about what we can provide for a lot of these traditional financial institutions is that Injective is very much institution forward from the ground up as an infrastructure, as a blockchain. A lot of modules, a lot of the components are built throughout time as we collaborate with a lot of these traditional financial institutions. And what they're going to find is easy integration, kind of ease of adoption, and more importantly, all the puzzle pieces are in place for them to integrate.
Makes sense. Let's also talk about the Injective EVM testnet, which I believe just recently launched. Well, could you just walk us through what the rationale is there? Why become EVM compatible? What's the value prop at this point?
So interestingly, it's part of our multi-VM approach. So EVM is not necessarily the only one, given that Injective already has a native WASM layer. So all of these environments will work in parallel. And in a certain way, like a parallelized VM, and also like a parallelized chain in the process of doing so. At the end of the day, it's just about supporting all the developers from all walks of life, from all the different environment, and EVM is obviously the most important starting point. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, making sure that there's full compatibility with all the core primitives and modules within Injective. And so that's why this is extremely exciting, because Injective is a chain that's not just about having different twists or having different throughput properties that uses EVM. Injective is a chain that kind of provides this extremely performant environment, this future-proof financial modules on top of having this native, highly performant EVM environment. So what developers are going to see is that they're going to see an EVM chain that also does 10 other things natively, while not losing out on any type of scalability or throughput impacts.
What's the pitch to developers for building on an Injective?
I think recently we've obviously been pitching to a lot of developers to build within our EVM environment. And it really comes down to accessing kind of this highway of spot and derivative exchange via these type of exchange precompiles. It means that EVM might be kind of an expensive environment to fully launch a order book based exchange, etc. But by just calling these precompiles, you can basically write your application in EVM, and you basically get close to zero fees when it comes to doing the exact same thing and launching the exact same exchange application within EVM. So I think that's one of the many interesting sells that we would make. And another thing is, kind of the AI forward nature of Injective. What Injective focuses on has been a lot of synergy between, kind of advanced financial applications, machine learning related, trading algorithms, et cetera, And by the vicinity of that, a lot of AI projects are also deploying on top of Injective. A lot of some of them more interesting than or like more funny than the others. Um, but I think what's really exciting for us is just about like giving what developers want. If the developers like say that they need a certain like precompile, or they need a certain like a feature, or they need a certain like a library contract, etc. We'll make it happen, and it's all about like this type of like high pitch approach. At the end of the day, this is what they feel the most satisfied and happy with.
Mhm.
Um, and of course, like EVM is actually currently in like kind of like on mainnet right now in a bit of like a private access where it'll kind of like be like fully launched by next month. So over I think the coming weeks, you'll be able to see like all these like major projects deploying on top of Injective as a teaser, so that once it opens up to the public, it has all these native contract suite for all developers to use immediately on day one on mainnet.
Have you seen a shift in what developers want over the last year or so? Just thinking year over year, how have the conversations changed if they have?
It changes every month. What's been interesting is that like we do see like kind of like a reduce in terms of demand for a lot of like AA related tool sets or features. So account abstraction I think has been mainly kind of installed or like dealt with on the wallet end, etc., where developers are kind of like relieved of the burden in a sense to like worry about or like deal with like compatibility with a lot of like account abstraction tools. So I think like the industry overall has been moving towards the wallet focus on like AA and making sure it's like backwards or like compatible with all the existing applications, and then all the dApps don't have to worry about like upgrading a contract or modifying a contract to like adapt to like different types of like AA primitives and features. So I think that's been like generally interesting because there's obviously a lot of like potential for like different dApps if they really move the needle on like modifying a contract to make it a lot more kind of like AA compatible or like AA forward. But it seems like currently they're more focusing on like high velocity like financial applications. Obviously, there's a Perp DEX meta, but there's also a lot of very interesting like financialization of like different types of behaviors and different types of mechanisms. GameFi, seeing like a slight resurgence these days, but in a completely different twist. So I think generally it really changes month to month, given how fast the space is moving.
That makes sense. I think you mentioned Perp DEXs as kind of leading the charge, but where are you seeing the most interest in applications from new developers or existing ones?
I think a lot of them are focusing on like AI related like product and tool suites when it comes to like a user automation, kind of like elevating like the user experience when it comes to like their investing journey and trading journey.
Mm.
Um, Kind of like having like these AI powered like fund management, trading strategies, etc. That's always been like extremely exciting. And now on the other hand, we've been seeing a lot of different types of on-chain economies when related to AI, like different types of like AI agents are being funded or like like that are deployed on top of like a blockchain in the sense that operates their like economy on chain. And then I think a lot of really interesting real world asset use cases, obviously, when it comes to like fundraising and also tokenization, and basically being able to access like a large base of like on-chain investors that has been growing exponentially recently. And yeah, like generally it's like kind of like all over the spectrum.
Interest across the board. Is there still a lot of interest in or demand for cross-chain interoperability and especially of agents being built?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is why like one of really exciting deployments for our EVM layer is going to be kind of like bridge and interoperability solutions like LayerZero and many of the ecosystem apps within LayerZero. And obviously with the newly revamped bridge experience that allows you to like abstract away all the complex bridge experiences to just allows the user to say I have this at this chain and I want it to be this at Injective and vice versa. That completely changes the game for like our user experience for like user onboarding, and that was deployed today, I think. So it's basically part of our job to make sure that that's like completely abstracted away. The crossing interaction is completely abstracted away, and there's like just native interoperability. It's to a point where basically it's not necessarily about like something that's like novel. or it's not some like groundbreaking like kind of like approach. It's more like like we need to do our job to make sure like this is the best possible environment for like developers, as to all the other chains. So in a sense, you can call it like more commoditized, but I think it's just about like the space maturing a lot, where interoperability is no longer like a blocker for developer success.
I think a lot of confusion about where crypto is going. Obviously, lots of institutional players are coming into the markets, lots of new use cases, Perp DEX volumes are increasing, prediction markets, agents, GameFi, like you mentioned. Where do you think crypto is going in the next year, and where will things kind of settle?
I think this is a very, very tough question to answer because the space is currently moving so fast, where every month there's some like, very, very new, interesting, exciting traction and development within the space. So this space, I feel like, has been growing so much where it's no longer a single dominant narrative or a single dominant player or vertical that's going to be kind of like taking over a spotlight, et cetera. But rather, there's just going to be multiple parallel type of like sectors within the space that are just going to be consistently, finding success and gaining traction. And this means that, prediction market was a very, very hot thing, starting basically like a few months ago, up to a year ago. But it'll just keep developing and keep maturing as a space, as a sector into it. Where basically us as an industry have to get used to the fact that like it's not just about like rotation of various trends and metas, et cetera, but rather the space is big enough where like there's just going to be like parallel development coming on, where like people can like focus their attention or focus their effort on like a single vertical and just see success consistently through that. I think honestly, like currently, obviously, we're seeing like prediction markets, we're seeing different types of RWA efforts, we're seeing some of the meme coin efforts, et cetera. And obviously, I like to consider it to be more of a socialized finance aspect of things. And obviously, with GameFi, which is also kind of like a different, similar type of like socialized finance aspect of things. I think all those are going to be like developing extremely rapidly. And that's kind of like especially when it comes to like GameFi or like a lot of like the non-fungible token space and also like RWA. I think it hasn't really seen its time of day within the space yet. And as a kind of like market kind of evolves over time, it'll be able to see another like jump in terms of success.
Makes sense. So, given all that, what is Injective's roadmap for next year? How are you building, thinking about all these changes in this very fast moving space?
I think it's honestly about like building extremely rapidly, shipping extremely rapidly, pushing out like the full roadmap for like most EVM, pushing out as many like RWA related efforts as possible when it comes to institutional integration, when it comes to better ISN offering, when it comes to more innovative like derivative instruments, et cetera, and bringing Helix into the front and center as like a everything application beyond just like a trading related activity. And then honestly, a lot of exciting efforts around the EVM to be able to kind of elevate that, to be able to bring it to like a more mainstream audience as well. So really position Injective to be an everything finance chain.
What do you think is one underrated space or vertical that will grow in the next year?
That's interesting. I think obviously like GameFi has been very, very interesting. It's been largely like underdeveloped, and a lot of the kind of like successful game developers that do utilize GameFi development have really like underexplored it in a sense, in the full potential. So you basically have kind of like this lever between kind of like a GameFi mechanism design and then also like the game quality. And it's typically for like you usually trade off like one or the other. And that's been like kind of like the consistent problem within like GameFi space, where you see like lower quality like games or like lower budget games in a sense. Usually, it doesn't mean that they're low quality per se. They really, really excel at like the GameFi mechanics, and then the vice versa. So I think overall, like since game development cycle and timeline is just extremely long, like you're going to see projects and companies are going to be breaking that balance and coming up with like both quality and also solid mechanic game productions out there.
Are there any particular games that you're excited about?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. I feel like usually it's just like you don't know about them until like they launch and you try it for the first time and you realize like, oh, like this is insane.
Right, right. I think we see that all the time and across the board in crypto. Cool. For listeners who want to learn more about Injective or follow you, where should they go?
I think injective.com is a great place to start, and also my personal X is at Eric Injective.
Okay, very cool. Is there a question that you'd want me to ask you that I haven't asked?
No, I think we covered everything. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. Please follow Injective on X and check them out. This has been Fully Diluted.